After last week's video, a lot of you were asking about what happened to my hand. Well, I just had a little bit of an accident up the mountain last week, and I dislocated my thumb. It actually popped out of the socket down here, so it was pretty painful. It was actually probably like a 9 out of 10 on the pain scale. And when it happened, I was like, ah! And Tim hadn't seen what had happened, and he was like, "What's up? What's wrong, Lou?" And he said, "Are you getting your period?" I was like, "Tim, when have you ever heard me roar with pain when I'm on my period?" But I guess he just sort of went into panic mode and was like, "It must be that." So yeah, I have to go back to the hospital and they're gonna look at it, and you know, this is to sort of hold it in place. It doesn't keep popping out, which it was looking a bit wobbly. But on that note, it has been quite a long time since I've spoken about my period on my YouTube channel. So I thought today would be a good day to do that. I was reading a funny article just recently that was speaking about some of the myths that people used to believe way back in the olden days about menstruation. You know, they used to think that women, when they were menstruating, had so much power that they could stop hail, that they could stop lightning, that they could kill beehives and whole fields of crops, and they believed that women could rust tools simply by being in the same room as them. And I kind of thought it was quite cool because it recognizes on some level that women are actually really powerful when we're bleeding. We do have like much more clarity and much more access to kind of the bigger picture or even the spiritual realm when we're menstruating. And a little bit of me was like, maybe we'd be quite well served by sort of perpetuating a few of those myths today. Like, imagine if we actually believed women could change the weather when they're on their period. We would be a force to be reckoned with. But the truth is, we actually don't need any more myths around menstruation, am I right? Because I think there's still plenty around. I thought today I might bust 3 of the top ones. Now there are hundreds that I could address, but these are the 3 that are so basic and fizz around so often. Whenever I speak about menstruation on my Instagram, for example, these 3 come up. And I thought I'd just take a bit of a closer look at them. So the first one is this idea that women shouldn't have sex when they're on their period, perhaps because when they're bleeding it's kind of dirty or something. I find this one a really interesting one because basically I think a woman should feel free to do kind of what she wants to do with her body if she's got a willing partner, obviously, whatever time of the month that is. And actually there's a fair bit of anecdotal evidence that women have a really good time in the bedroom when they're menstruating. And in fact, in history, women were seen as so powerful and so deeply connected when they're on their period that was the time everybody wanted to make sweet love to them. So that's kind of a funny thing about our modern day life, is that it's like, no, period sex, blah. But actually, a lot of women have a really good time. But also, some studies have been done to show that orgasms can actually ease your period cramps. So basically, in response to that myth, you should listen to your body and do what you want to do. Okay, number 2, this idea that women are angry when they're on their period. And this one is nearly true, and it might be different for some women out there. But the truth is that women get those surges of frustration and anger usually a few days before their period. And actually when they get their period, that can be a really significant time of kind of peace and focus. If women aren't given the chance to kind of go inward and experience that peace and focus, that can kind of flip into a frustration or disappointment. But those few days before getting the period is actually when we're kind of a little bit mad. And that's because the hormones that are released in our body at that time are really designed to help us see really clearly and tell the truth about it. And actually, if for a few days every month we feel empowered to speak the truth about something, to not put up with something that happens time and time again that is not okay, I actually think that's a really, really good thing. And I guess if we can understand that that is a really natural part of our cycle, we can actually approach it with a little bit more grace, a little bit more self-kindness, and a little bit more compassion. So yeah, busting that one. The actual time of the bleed is usually quite a kind of centered one for women, but it's the period beforehand where we get a bit like grah. But even that is incredibly useful thing. I've got more videos about this, so check out my videos in the box below for more information about this whole seasonal cycle that we go through with our period. And number 3 is the myth that periods are a private thing, that we shouldn't talk about them, that we should hide our sanitary products, and that talking about bleeding is kind of generally quite crass. I feel like this is definitely a remnant from a previous generation, perhaps even a remnant from like the Victorian era. Because actually, although it is a personal thing, bleeding, it happens to 50% of the population. At any time, you're going to be sitting in a room with people who are bleeding and who are experiencing the effects of that. And I've said it before, but I'm sure that if men bled, there would not be this kind of like secrecy and shame about bleeding. They just wouldn't. They'd be talking about it all the time. Workplaces would be designed to work with a menstrual cycle. I'm absolutely convinced. You don't have to be ashamed that you bleed for a few days every single month. You can actually see it as a little bit of your superpower. And if you want to keep your menstrual products on the shelf in the bathroom, I say go for it. Let everybody see that you happen to bleed every month. And do feel free to share with your friends or on your Instagram page where you are at in your cycle, because every time we do that, we liberate a little bit more of the narrative around our periods. We really help each other by sharing our stories. I can remember reading in the book Wild Power, which I highly recommend, that one of the women experienced around kind of day 25 some kind of anxiety-fueled insomnia. And when I read that, I realized that that's exactly what I have as well. Every single month for about 3 days, I lie in bed and I don't sleep because I'm worried about like the state of the world. And when I read that, I had like this rush of like, I'm not broken. So sharing our stories about what our menstrual cycle feels like can be really empowering and really liberating thing. So I just want to encourage you to break yourself free of that myth that we should keep quiet about our periods. I really love the work that Thinx is doing around the kind of dismantling of this shame. Thinx have created period undies and everybody is raving about them, saying that it has changed their life. So I'm going to be trialing some of these period undies. They recently sent me a few pairs and already I'm loving them. They're super soft. They look absolutely gorgeous. You actually can't feel the absorbent bit at all. It's just kind of, you can hardly feel it. And depending on the style of pants you get, they will hold between 2 and 3 tampons worth of blood. So for lots of people, that will be like a whole day's period. They can just free bleed into their undies. And I love that because I actually think there's something really instinctive about free bleeding. Every single period, I will stain a pair of my pants. And I read on the Thinx website that over 54% of women have stained all of their knickers from their period. And I laughed when I read that because I thought I was alone in that. I thought I must be the only person on the planet that every single period stains her undies. But no, it's actually quite normal, and I think that's because somewhere inside of us, we don't really want to be using products. We want to be able to just free bleed, and I love that Thinx allows us to do that. You can also get organic ones, which is obviously way better for the planet, and it's a super sustainable product. You're not going to be throwing anything away when you get your period using Thinx. And if you want to be super in touch with your period, you can do what women throughout the ages have done, and you can soak your Thinx in a bucket overnight after bleeding into them, and then use that water to water your flowers or the trees in your garden. It's absolutely full of nutrients that your garden will love, and then you get this super cool connection with the earth and you're not just wasting your period blood. If you want to check out Thinx, you can click the link below. You can get $10 off your order if you use the link that I share with you. I'd love to hear if you've enjoyed period undies, and I'd also love to hear any myths that you are dismantling in your life or your community around menstruation. Wherever you are in the world, much love to you, and bleed radical.